two, one. You think it started yet? It's a little game I play, trying to figure out when it actually goes live. Whoa, that's a good indication. Hi, I'm Brian Martin, and welcome to my weekly broadcast called What Was Jesus Thinking? Every week we take a look at the lectionary gospel lesson for the week and try to come up with some inspiration and encouragement, some hope, um, and empowerment for our lives today. And we need a lot of inspiration and hope, encouragement, and empowerment these days. With the COVID virus going on and with political and ethnic strife in our country and worldwide, it's really important for us to hear a voice that can give us a little bit of inspiration and hopefully a lot of love. And that's what I attempt to do. Now, you know probably that the Revised Common Lectionary has a set of 4 readings for every Sunday on the Christian calendar in a 3-year cycle. I always choose during this time to read the gospel lesson because I like Jesus. And so I focus on that quite a bit for a long time now. You can learn more about the Revised Common Lectionary by Googling it. There's a good Wikipedia article about it, and you can see how it was developed and where it's used. It is used worldwide in millions of churches where there is a focus on the Christian calendar. Some exceptions would be some evangelical churches and other churches that have topical presentations of the gospel lessons. So they have generally they have a particular topic that's generic to the season or the time or what's happening in a particular area at a particular time, and they draw out biblical references for that. And so that is an alternative, a different way of approaching than what I'm using. So learn more about the Revised Common Lectionary by checking it out in Wikipedia or just Googling it. The gospel lesson for today is divided up into 2 parts. It's both from Matthew chapter 11. And Matthew chapter 11 begins with the imprisonment of John the Baptist and Jesus' response to that. And so this first part is a response to that. And then the second part is a saying of Jesus where Jesus is praying or thanking God at a particular time. Are you ready? So if you have your Bibles, just go ahead and pull it out to Matthew chapter 11, and I'll be reading at verse 16. Here we go. Jesus speaking. But to what will I compare this generation? It's like children sitting in the marketplaces and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating or drinking, and they said, he has a demon. And the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, look, a glutton and a drunkard. I'm going to read the verse 18 again because I think I missed an important word. Here we go. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they said, he has a demon. And then in verse 19, then the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they said, he is a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. So Jesus is pointing out that this generation, now that's a really key and important term. So let's spend a few moments talking about this generation. I think a contemporary word that we could use today is this particular culture. Now, it would be speaking about the predominant culture. Jesus was talking about this generation, the predominant culture. And in our country, in our world, we have a lot of different forms of culture. And a culture is a figment of our imagination. And what I mean by that is It's not a real physical entity. It is a fiction. It is an idea. It is a thought. And what people do is they form cultures so that they can have similar thoughts, similar rules, similar rituals, similar um, things that are important practices in their world. And what this does is provides a sense of stability in the world for them, and it also gives them a sense of their own identity because they belong to it. And so a large part of what a culture does is it gives a person and their identity. And Jesus struggled with his culture, the predominant culture of that age. And there were two. One was the Roman government, who was the political ruling authority in that particular area, and the other was the Sanhedrin, or the Jewish culture, Jewish religious culture, which had a lot of power. And Jesus was speaking out, especially about the religious culture of that particular day. And so he's finding that that particular culture, they had such a bias about their own views. They're unable to hear the message of John the Baptist, and so they ridiculed him. They said he has a demon. And then they also ridiculed Jesus as well. So this is what the dynamics of what was going on. They were demeaning, they were putting down, they were saying that they weren't right. And so this was a problem for Jesus that he always had. Wherever he went, in spite of the deeds that he did, he always had this kind of a political, spiritual, religious, cultural backlash. It was just a struggle that he had. That's what he had to do. Now, the next part is in verse 25 through verse 30. And Jesus, at that time, Jesus said, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent, and you have revealed them to infants. Okay, so Jesus is praying a prayer of gratitude and thanksgiving. And now notice it's not a prayer of gratitude and thanksgiving for the material benefit that Jesus has because of his position. No, he is thankful because of the insight that he has gained that most of the others don't have. So it continues. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father. So the prayer ends, and he goes now and he explains, all things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal. So Jesus is saying he's got important insights about the world, truth, God that come from him from a divine source, and he was willing to share that with anybody at any time. And then there's this beautiful invitation that a lot of people hold to in times of difficulty. And this is a really beautiful saying. Listen to this. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So this is a beautiful invitation that Jesus is inviting people to experience a totally different perspective in their world. It's a perspective that's free of the political and the religious environments and the struggles that were happening in Palestine in that particular time. It's free of any kind of a burden that's been put on them or that they feel because of their particular generation, because of their particular culture. The culture is a tremendously powerful thing. It helps it helps people create order, but it also provides for them their sense of identity and how they belong and how they work in the world. Jesus is saying the particular culture that you're in, the generation that you're in, doesn't give you rest and their yoke is heavy, and it's a difficult experience. And what I give you is something that's totally and completely different. I give you rest. Now, what's interesting about this is that I don't know if Jesus experienced the kind of rest that you and I might be experiencing on the 4th of July weekend. I know yesterday I abstained from just about anything I could possibly do because, frankly, the last few weeks have been really challenging personally, business-wise and personally for me. And so having that day where I did nothing and I just was resting was beautiful. It was extremely wonderful. But I don't think that's the kind of rest that Jesus is talking about. I think he's talking about rest in our thinking process, in the stories inside of our heads, in the way that we respond to the world and how the world responds to us. And I don't know that Jesus ever experienced the kind of rest that I had on the 4th of July, where I did nothing but take little naps, sleep in, relax, sit by the pool, things like that. I'm sure that happened for Jesus every once in a while. But I do believe the type of rest that he was talking about was the rest of knowing that his life and his purpose and his mission was a wonderful and a beautiful thing, and that he could find more love and satisfaction and peace in it than in any other type of thought process or world. Cultures are all man-made, every single one of them. Religious cultures, ethnic cultures, all cultures, political cultures are made by man. And none of them actually exist in the world. There's no physical reality of the particular cultures. It's all a process of our imagination, of our thought process. It's totally different type of experience of living than our ancient ancestors had when they were foragers and gatherers and they were living in the wilderness or in the savannah. Every single day they gathered enough food for them, and what's surprising is that they had such a long lifestyle. For 3 or 4 hours a day, they would go out and gather food and mushrooms and things to eat, plants and small animals, and they would bring them back, and then they would live their lives together, and however they lived their lives. There was no fantasy there was no ideology, there was no fiction that was controlling their lives. It was they were living from day to day with the provision that was provided for them, and they had something that was real. Now, I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about, wanting us to go back and be hunters and gatherers. But I do believe that Jesus had an idea that there was something greater than the culture and the thoughts, the beliefs, the fantasies, the ideas, the institution, the figments of their imaginations. And what that one thing was is love. Because love is not a figment of our imagination. A lot of people struggle with exactly what love is, but here is what love is most like. Love is like when we care for and we nurture our children. There'll be a lot of people who never become parents, and that's great because they can express their love in many ways. But most people have the experience of birthing and nurturing a children and having a family. A lot of people who can't decide to adopt or become involved. And children are such an important part of our life and our development. And that's where the root of love is. And I think that's why Christianity and in other religions, they speak of God in terms of Father, because there's that paternal connection with people. And that is so profound. And it is so wonderful. And that is a way that we can live in the world that's fundamentally different than the other ideas and fictions that we've created and the stories that we have about what's right and what's wrong and who's right and who's wrong, what we believe or what they believe. The difference is when we nurture and develop and love our children, that's something that's already inside of us. It's nothing that we created. It's nothing that we fantasized about. It's something that we experienced. It's real. So love is the most real thing that human beings have. And when we can focus on the love that we have for each other, for our children, then life becomes more real. So when Jesus talks about giving people rest, I think that what he's talking about is bringing us back to the thought of what's most important to our lives every single day. And that is our caring, our loving, and our nurturing each other. And I'm absolutely positive, with no shadow of doubt, that when we do that to each other in all of our settings that we're in, our world is richer and better and more peaceful. And we're going to find rest. I'm Brian Martin. Thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you'll come back and visit often. I have a whole slew of these. I'll give you a link for YouTube that will have a large catalog of these videos that you can read and you can listen to. You can't read them, but you can listen to them. I hope you have a blessed day. And I love you. That's why I do this.